So good morning. And for those who are newly joining this class, we are going through a text called the Middle-Length Treatise on the Stages of the Path to Enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa. And we started last November, I think, and there's been breaks, but we're carrying on, and we're now in the section of karma, which is a really important topic. It ensures our future happiness. Like most people are concerned about the future, and they save money and buy insurance policies to make sure that they'll be comfortable in the later part of their life. And those things are important, but karma is even more important, because knowing about karma and living in accordance with karma ensures our happiness, not just for this life, but future lives, for a long time to come in the future. And I like to think of this course as we're studying it together, learning it together, because I haven't really studied it before, although I have received the oral transmission of the text from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, at least once, maybe twice, but I never actually studied it, and I wanted to study it, so I thought of this as a way of, we can all learn it together, and go through it together. So don't expect me to be like an expert on this text, but I'm doing my best. And so we start with some prayers and then do a little bit of meditation to ensure that our motivation is as positive as possible.
To the teacher now, transcendent destroyer, the one thus gone, the foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to bliss, nor the world's supreme guide to beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme science, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, Sagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop, a dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe false, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn Mount Meru, foreland, sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable Let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhist, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhist, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhist, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Okay, let's take a few more minutes to check our motivation. So we're very fortunate to have a human life with all the ideal conditions, both inner conditions like good health and our brain working properly, our senses working properly, having the resources we need to survive so that we're not having to spend all our time just trying to survive. So we have some free time, leisure time, to be able to pursue various studies like the Dharma. And we have interest in the Dharma. Not everybody is interested in the Dharma. Not everyone sees the value of the Dharma. So these are some of the inner conditions that we have that make our life very fortunate. And we also have the outer conditions of the Dharma being available. There are many teachers who have studied and practiced the Dharma and are teaching the Dharma, written books and so on. So we are able to learn the Dharma, which has been kept alive since the time of the Buddha. And we have places where we can learn the Dharma, like here, Sravasti Abbey, which is a very conducive situation, away from noise and busyness of cities and having lots of time to learn and practice the Dharma. So really try to feel how fortunate you are to have all of these as well as other circumstances that make our life really rich with opportunities, especially for spiritual study and practice. So what do we do with this life? There are many things we can do, countless things that we can do with our life, our time, and our energy. But given that our life doesn't last forever, we have a limited amount of time, maybe 80, 90, 100 years. That's not so long. And so it's important to focus on what's really meaningful and beneficial and satisfying for ourselves and others. And Dharma is really the most beneficial thing because it shows us how to tap into our true potential. We have Buddha nature. Our mind is basically clear and pure. the afflictions like anger, attachment, and ignorance are not inherent, permanent fixtures in our mind, but they're temporary, transitory, and they can be removed, and our good qualities can be developed more and more. So qualities like compassion, love, patience, wisdom, and so on, we can work on cultivating these, increasing them, and bringing them to a point of perfection. So we have that potential. The Dharma shows us how to do it, and we have the basic nature that enables us to transform our mind from being a afflicted, imperfect, suffering mind into a fully perfect, fully enlightened, free of all suffering and problems and their causes, perfect in all good qualities. So our mind can become that kind of mind, enlightened mind. And we don't do this for our own benefit alone, but for the benefit of others. That's the real reason for working on our potential for enlightenment and attaining enlightenment. It's so that we can then help all other sentient beings from whom we have received an immeasurable amount of kindness and will continue to receive kindness all along the way up to enlightenment. So there's no way we can attain enlightenment without other sentient beings. So it just wouldn't be right to turn our backs on them and just enjoy enlightenment for ourselves. Instead, it's only appropriate that we then work for the benefit of all living beings, leading them out of suffering, leading them to nirvana and to enlightenment as well. And this text that we're looking at shows us how to do that. It shows us the stages of the path to enlightenment. So really feel that you're doing this, you're learning about this text and trying to practice it, not just for your own benefit, but for the benefit of all other sentient beings. So we were going through the 10 non-virtuous actions. These are the main types of karma the Buddha pointed out as being non-virtuous and the cause of suffering and misery that we know we don't really want. And so we need to do our best to refrain from doing these actions. And before I continue, there were a couple of questions that came up. The last class, we talked about covetousness, which is number 8. And that's usually explained as wishing to have what somebody else has. That's involved mainly with attachment, desire, clinging, craving, wanting, what belongs to others, wanting to make it our own. And Venerable Sangye had asked a question about window shopping, going to the mall and looking at all the things that are there, or a market, also online. Now you don't even have to go out of your house. You can just sit in front of your computer and go shopping. So she wondered if that is a type of covetousness. And I wasn't sure. I wondered about that myself. So I asked Geshe Longmo at breakfast the other day. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but what I understood was that, yeah, if I use the example of a cup, if you go into a shop and you see a really beautiful cup and you want to buy it. And she said, yeah, if it's something that you really need and you use it, then it's not covetousness. But if you don't really need it, if it's excess, you already have 20 cups and you see another one that's nicer than the ones you have, then yeah, that would be covetousness. Yeah. Is that right? Yeah, so that's helpful because, this is such a, not just in America, but I think all over the world, people, we have shops and markets set up to generate. People are doing it for their livelihood, of course. It's a way that people support themselves and their families, but still, they set up displays of beautiful items, beautiful objects. They want people to generate desire and attachment and buy more things than they really need. So, But I was also thinking that there is, because normally, the way it's explained, covetousness is like if you go to somebody's house and you see things that they have, and you want to have those things for yourself, and then you start thinking, how can I get that? And so it's not always explained as going shopping, things in a shop. And there is a difference between having desire for something you see in a shop and having desire for something you see in somebody's home. Because if you walk into somebody's home and you see nice things and you're sort of looking around, checking them out, and asking the person, oh, this is really nice, and where did you get it, and how much did you pay, and oh, would you sell it to me? Probably the person will be uncomfortable, right? That's not going to make them happy. If someone did that to you, you'd probably feel kind of, I'm not sure I want to invite this person over to my house again. It's like uncomfortable for them. Whereas it's just the opposite in a shop, A shopkeeper will put things out in their shop. They want people to notice them, to look at them, to take an interest in them, ask how much is it, because that's how they make their living. So if you behave that way in a shop, the person will probably be happy rather than unhappy. So there's some difference, but I think that when we talk about non-virtuous behavior, it's more in terms of what kind of effects it has on us rather than on other people. I think that's the main criteria for something being non-virtuous. It's bringing suffering for ourselves. It might also bring suffering to others, but it brings suffering to ourselves. We're creating the cause for suffering for ourselves. And so, the main affliction involved in covetousness is desire, attachment, craving, clinging. And that's one of the main causes of remaining in samsara, cyclic existence, which itself is like a prison full of misery and suffering and unsatisfactoriness. Even the pleasant experiences we have are not really pleasure, they're just another kind of unsatisfactoriness. And so indulging our desire, our attachment, feeding it, perpetuating it, is just keeping us longer in samsara. And is that what we want? Ideally, no. Yeah. So if we understand the Four Noble Truths, as long as we're in samsara, cyclic existence, with our afflictions like attachment, aversion, ignorance, and so on, then we continue to suffer and we're not experiencing the peace and happiness that we could experience out of samsara, beyond samsara, in nirvana and enlightenment. And so, indulging in desire, attachment, even for things we see in shops and online and so forth. Yeah, this is going against our wish to be free of suffering, our wish to be free of samsara. Yeah. But on the other hand, sometimes we do need things. So if it's something you really do need, maybe you only had one cup and it broke, and so you need something to drink your tea and your water from. Or maybe you have one cup, but you want to have another cup so that you can invite somebody over and offer them a cup of tea. So it's a question of need rather than just liking something and wanting it because it's attractive. Is that clear? And then Venerable Ngawan had asked a question because there was this list of so-called incomplete forms of covetousness, which weren't in our book, but they were in the Lamrim Chenmo, the longer version of the Lamrim by Lama Tsongkhapa, and also Geshe Zopa explained them in his book. And one of those incomplete forms of covetousness was something about wanting to enjoy the pleasures of the desire realm gods. So these higher realms, the god realms or deva realms, so having the wish to go there and experience their pleasures. And his question was, but isn't that something virtuous? Because wishing to have a fortunate rebirth, either as a human being or as a deva, is considered virtuous. It's not the best motivation that we could have, but it's still a good motivation because it does motivate us to do virtuous actions. Yeah, and so it's difficult to see how that could be something non-virtuous. And I tried to find more information about that, but I wasn't able to. But I'm wondering, this is just a guess, that and I think this particular example came from a text by a Sangha, which probably isn't translated into English, so it's hard to find information. But I'm just wondering if maybe it's more about not just being born in the God realm, but wanting to have those pleasures. Like, you hear about the gods, their wonderful palaces and their wealth and their enjoyments, and feeling, I want to make those mine. I want those to be mine. Similar to, like, if you're driving around Seattle and you see Bill Gates' house, beautiful house on the lake with huge garden and so on, and boats and so on, and you think, oh, I would like that for myself. I want to make that mine. So that's covetousness. And so if you maybe, this is talking about that kind of mind with the gods' pleasures. You hear about the pleasures of the gods, Indra and Shiva and so on, and you feel, I want those for myself. Maybe, I'm just guessing that that's why it's covetousness, which is something non-virtuous rather than just, oh, I want to be born in a God realm. I don't want to be born in the 3 lower realms. I want a good rebirth, and that's a good one. I won't be suffering. I don't know. It's just a guess, but to me that would make it sensible. Okay, so we've covered the first 9 of the 10 non-virtues. So now let's look at number 10, which is wrong views. So in the book, this is on page 129, if you have a book. So wrong views. And we're looking at these by way of these 4 aspects of a complete action. Okay, so every action that we do is different, is unique because of different factors, different variables, like the object, which is the basis of the action, the state of mind that you have while you're doing the action, how you do it, the performance, and then completion, whether it's done in a complete way or not. So the variations in these 4 aspects will determine if that karma is heavier or lighter. and also determine if it's a complete karma. And the meaning of a complete karma is it's powerful enough, strong enough to bring a whole rebirth, not just certain experiences within samsara, but a whole life, a rebirth in samsara. And I was thinking maybe an analogy is like having a ticket. Okay. If you have a ticket to travel to a certain place, that means you can get on the airplane and make that journey and go to that place. So creating a complete karma is a bit like getting a ticket. And if it's a virtuous karma, if the karma that we're creating is virtuous, then it's like a ticket to go to some nice place that you want to go, like maybe Paris or London or Honolulu or whatever. Okay, a nice destination. But if we do something non-virtuous, it's like getting a ticket to a not very nice place, like, you know, some place where there's war going on, like Ukraine or Gaza, or a famine. There's, you know, nothing to eat. So if you get a ticket to go to a place like that, and you have to go, you have no choice, then that's not so something to look forward to. So it's like that when we create a complete karma. If it's a virtuous karma, then that is the cause to be born in a fortunate situation, a good situation. But if we create a complete form of a non-virtuous karma, then that's like that's the cause to be born in an unfortunate situation, one of the three lower realms, unless it's purified. Okay, so wrong views. So the basis of wrong views is an object that actually exists. And so what this means is it's it's not just anything, but it's something to do with Dharma. It has to be a topic or a subject that is important for a Dharma practice, for a spiritual practice. For example, karma, you know, whether there's such a thing as karma or not, or the possibility of attaining enlightenment. Yeah, is that something that exists? So usually, wrong views, examples of wrong views would be denying the existence of things like karma or the possibility of attaining enlightenment. Because denying those will impact our spiritual practice, our aspiration to engage in spiritual practice. Okay, so then attitude, that has three parts: discernment, affliction, motivation. So among the three aspects belonging to the attitude, the discernment consists in considering the denial of the object to be true. So what that means is, let's say with regard to karma, that's what you are denying. You're denying the existence of karma. And so your discernment in this case must be that you are convinced that there really is no karma. It's not just doubt. You know, a lot of people have doubt about things. I don't know if it's true or not, but you haven't really decided. But with wrong views, you're no longer in doubt. You have decided, no way there's such a thing as karma. It's complete nonsense. I don't believe it. You just like close your mind to the existence of karma. The mental affliction, that's the second part, is any of the three poisons. So the three poisons are attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And it's in the case of the three poisons, the ignorance is ignorance about karma. It's not the ignorance, self-grasping ignorance, grasping at things as inherent existence, but it's ignorance of karma. So any of those three poisons could be involved as the motivation for wrong views. So what would be an example of generating wrong views due to attachment? Can anyone think of an example? There's a classic example. I guess this something that happened way back in India. And there's one school called the Charvakas. And they're kind of like scientific materialists. They only believe in what can be seen directly. They don't believe in things like past lives, future lives, and so on. So it said there was one person belonging to that school who was actually a teacher, and he wanted to have sex with his daughter. And so he said, there's no such thing as karma, something like that. Yeah, so he kind of denied the existence of karma to justify his misbehavior. You know, like, I can do this and there won't be any consequences. So that's an example of generating wrong views due to attachment. You have strong desire, strong attachment to do something naughty. And so you say, oh, there's no karma, just to be able to fulfill your desire, your attachment. Any other examples you could think of?
I'm thinking that it's okay to kill and eat animals because they taste good. You're attached to their taste.
Yeah, that's so, but that's with regard to the act of killing. But you're saying, thinking that, oh, there's no consequences, there's no negative consequences to killing. I can kill and not have any negative consequences because of your desire, attachment.
I don't know, sorry, I'm not sure.
Because this is about wrong views. It's saying it's saying there's no such thing as karma, there's no such thing as enlightenment, there's no such thing as. So in that case, in that example, what would be the wrong view? There's no consequence to killing.
Maybe, yeah. I'd have to think about it more.
Yeah, because there's all different kinds of views that people can have, right? And among views, of course, some are right views and some are wrong views. So, and even among wrong views, there's different kinds of wrong views, and some of them would not really be included here. For example, saying that the Holocaust didn't exist. You know, there are people who have that kind of view. The Holocaust didn't exist. I don't know if that would be considered a wrong view here, because it doesn't necessarily impact one's Dharma practice, one's spiritual practice. And there's all these conspiracy views that people have, conspiracy theories, you know, I don't know what, UFOs and this and that and so on. So again, those may not necessarily impact our spiritual practice. So wrong views here is specifically when we deny the existence of something that actually does exist, and not believing in that will impact our Dharma practice, our spiritual practice. Sorry?
Killing animal for sacrificing, especially in India, it still exists in some part of India now.
Yeah, well, I guess for that to be a wrong view, it would have to be the view that if we kill animals and sacrifice, offer their blood to such and such a god, then there's no harmful consequences. So denying any harmful consequences of that particular action, that would be a wrong view. Jason?
if one is really attached to the feeling of safety they have from believing in God, then they might say that what the Buddha taught was incorrect.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, clinging to some view like, oh, there's no such thing as enlightenment, or there's no such thing as past lives and future lives, because you're more comfortable with the views that you have been taught as a childhood, or in your childhood, or views of your group, the group that you belong to. You don't want to move out of that. So there's attachment to that.
Is it possible to believe in karma, but believe in it incorrectly? For example, there are people who think that they can be like some kind of agent of karma. If somebody does something they disagree with out of attachment to an idea, they think that it's up to them to cause their consequences, to cause their karma to ripen. They think that it's them doing that. They say they believe in karma and it causes them to act in that way. Would that be an example?
Well, I'm not sure if that's what would be considered wrong view here. Wrong view is more explained as like you just totally deny karma. There's no consequences at all to any action. But if you have just a mistaken understanding of karma, you have distortions in your understanding of karma, that may not be wrong views. It's more like, yeah, just ignorance. So it is important to, yeah, because the word karma, it's even in the dictionary now, and it's used in songs and here and there, everywhere. but there's probably a lot of misunderstandings about the meaning of karma and misuse, misuse of karma. So we have to be careful.
Going back to the killing of animals, would the wrong view to be thinking about them as just food to eat, and not an animal, not a being, not something that's a part of the environment, to be protected and nurtured?
Yeah. So I guess if you thought animals, like this is what a lot of people do think, animals don't have thoughts and feelings, don't have consciousness, they don't suffer if they are killed. Well, that would be a wrong view. There's no suffering. Yeah, that would be a wrong view. And that would be a harmful wrong view, because then you feel, oh, I can do whatever I want, I can torture them, I can get them to fight, like, I don't know, they have dog fights and rooster fights and things like that. I can do all those things. It doesn't matter, they don't suffer. So yeah, then you would be engaged, you could easily engage in a lot of non-virtue, causing suffering to those beings, but also creating suffering for yourself. Yeah, so I think we'll have to move on. There's probably lots of other examples, but maybe that's enough just to get a sense of how attachment, desire could be a motivating factor for wrong views, and anger or hatred could also be a motivating factor for wrong views. One example I thought of would be if out of spite for somebody, for example, when you're a teenager and you're angry at your parents, you want to, upset them, then you might reject, let's say your parents are Buddhist, and they believe in karma and other things, related to Buddhism, but you're angry at your parents, you want to go against them, and so you deny the things that they believe in. Yeah, you say, oh, that's rubbish, that's not true, and so on, out of anger, wanting to hurt them, wanting to upset them. But the main motivating factor for wrong views is ignorance, which is ignorance of karma, just not understanding the reality of cause and effect, karma. Okay, then the motivation consists in wanting to deny that thing. So you actually have to have this deliberate intention to reject or deny. I mean, I suppose, if you have the tendency to talk a lot and you go blah, 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 and you don't really think carefully about what you're saying, you might say something like, oh, there's no karma, I don't believe in karma. But that's not coming from, a deep thought, well thought out intention to actually deny karma. So there actually has to be a conscious intention to deny that thing that you're denying. Okay, then the performance. This is a little complicated. It mentions a number of different examples. The performance consists in beginning to engage in such thinking. So, you actually start a thought process, a thinking process. Because, to be full-fledged wrong views, it is something that requires a lot of thought. Like you're really thinking about this particular thing. It's not just careless and, oh, I don't believe in that, but you really thought about it and reach a conclusion. Okay, so there are 4 points. Denying causes, which consists in the view there is no good conduct and bad conduct. So that means you're denying that there's such a thing as right behavior and wrong behavior. Certain types of behavior or actions are right and lead to happiness, others are wrong and lead to suffering. So just denying causes. And the second is denying effects, which consists in the view there are no fully ripened effects of those two. So there you're denying that there are results or consequences to certain types of actions, whether you kill, for example, or you save lives, that no, there will be no results, no consequences of those. Then denying activities, and that's explained a little further down, and denying existing phenomena, which consists in the view arhats and the like do not exist. Okay, so some people may have that view. They may hear about, like reading Buddhist scriptures or hearing Buddhist scriptures, they hear about arhats, those who have attained nirvana, or Buddhas, those who have attained enlightenment, bodhisattvas, those who are on the way to enlightenment. And they don't think that these are real beings, that they may think these are like mythical beings, like the Greek gods. We hear about the Greek gods, but most people don't believe in them. Oh yeah, people just invented those stories, made up those stories, but they're not actually real people, real beings. So some people might believe that about these beings mentioned in the Buddhist scriptures. So then going back to the third, which is denying activities, has 3 aspects. First is denying the activity of planting and holding the seed, which consists in the view there is no planting of a seed by the father and no holding of a seed by the mother. That was a little strange, but it seems denying that babies come from mothers and fathers. I don't know, maybe there's some people in the world who have that view. It's like what we tell kids, that a baby appears in the house and they say, oh, the stork brought it. The mailman brought it. It just dropped down from space. I don't know. Anyway, it's hard to see how that view would impact our spiritual practice. Well, I guess it could, because if you're a child and you think you didn't really come from your mother and father, then you wouldn't feel so much respect for them or gratitude towards them. And parents are considered, important objects for us to have respect and gratitude and appreciation and, behave in a virtuous way with regard to them. So if you discount mothers and fathers, then that could lead you to engage in negative behavior towards them. The second is denying the activity of coming and going, which consists in the view there is no coming from a former existence to this one, and no going from this one to a future one. So in other words, denying rebirth, reincarnation, which is a very common situation in the West. Even many people who consider themselves Buddhist, they're very attracted to the Buddhist teachings and practice meditation. They like Buddhism, but they don't accept rebirth. They don't accept reincarnation. And so, yeah, that can have adverse consequences, because if you don't think there's any rebirth after this one, then your practice of ethics, ethical conduct might be kind of loose and sloppy, and it might create the causes for unfortunate rebirth while denying there is such a thing. And then the third is denying the activity of being born, which consists in the view there is no intermediate state into which sentient beings are miraculously born. So this means denying the intermediate state, the bardo. And there are, in the Theravada tradition, I don't know how common it is, but I've heard in the Theravada tradition there is this view that there's no intermediate state after death. They say rebirth takes place immediately. As soon as the consciousness separates from the body, it immediately has a new life, a new rebirth. And this view must have been around in the past as well, because Vasubandhu, in his text, Abhidharma Kosha, Treasury of Abhidharma, he has pages and pages of, explaining the intermediate state and refuting those who deny it. So I guess, it probably goes way back. I'm not sure I don't know how this would really impact your spiritual practice, though, if you didn't believe in the intermediate state. You're still accepting rebirth.
It seems like it would affect our preparation for death.
Well, if you didn't believe in the bardo, but you still believed in rebirth, then you would still be very careful about your karma and preparing for death so that you can have a fortunate rebirth in your next life. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it, but anyway, it does seem to be a topic that's controversial within Buddhism. Tenzin, hi, welcome back.
Venerable, I have a question on if this is a view from a different schools, and then if my school, I would treat other people as wrong view. So how do you actually discern that?
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, yeah, it wouldn't be polite, wouldn't be kind of politically correct to say that, yeah, someone who's following another school of Buddhism and practicing very well, that they are holding wrong views. It's probably best not to, get into maybe a friendly discussion about it, but not into a kind of argument about it. So I think it's more to, with all these aspects of karma, it's not so much about looking at others and what they're doing and judging them, but rather ourselves. Yeah, just trying to be really careful about our own behavior, about body, speech, and mind, and trying to keep it within the realm of what's virtue and avoiding what's non-virtue. Okay, so those are, yeah. Then for the last point, completion of the action, it says that completion is to be certain of one's denial. So you have to be really convinced. And you're not in doubt. You're not still thinking, oh, maybe there's karma, maybe there isn't karma. I don't know. Maybe there's enlightenment, maybe there's no enlightenment. So you've gone beyond that sort of wavering mind, and you are certain about what you're denying. However, as with the other two non-virtues of mind, there are 5 factors which not mentioned in this book, but they are mentioned elsewhere, like in the Lamrim Chenmo and in volume 2, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice, which has a very complete section on karma. So there needs to be 5 factors for this action to be complete. The first is confusion that doesn't understand phenomena, how things really exist. So you have to be confused about things, the actual way that things exist. And number 2 is a mind that delights in performing non-virtue, harmful actions. So you have to have delight in doing what is non-virtuous. And number 3 is a stubborn attitude due to reflecting on incorrect teachings, so faulty reasoning, and being stubborn to kind of cling to these incorrect ideas. Number 4, denying that the 3 jewels or karma and its effects exist. Geshe Zopa's commentary to that is denying the value of virtuous and spiritual actions. So there's actually some denial there of things that are virtuous and valuable and beneficial. And then number 5 is lacking integrity and not wanting to be free from the faults of wrong views. And probably you don't even recognize that there are faults. You probably think that your views are wonderful and fantastic and perfect, and there's nothing wrong with them at all. So you don't want to give them up. So Geshe Zopa says that if any of those 5 are missing, then it's not a complete action of wrong views. And he says there are many other wrong views, but the ones mentioned here are the most powerful because they can result in roots of virtue being cut and can lead to engage in lots of non-virtue. So especially denying karma, if you refuse to accept that there are consequences to our behavior, you can do anything you want, then that can easily lead to engaging in non-virtue, where you're creating suffering, causes of suffering for yourself. So that's particularly important to try to avoid. But also, denying that there's such a thing as enlightenment, enlightened beings, arhats, bodhisattvas, and so on, then you wouldn't have any inspiration or aspiration to attain those states, right? So that would be detrimental to spiritual practice. And what's the other big one? Denying rebirth. I mean, you could still live a virtuous life. You could still create virtue even if you don't believe in rebirth. But your virtue may not be as strong and powerful and sincere if you think, oh, everything just ends at the end of this life. Nothing continues. I think it would be hard to, have a strong impetus to engage in spiritual practice if you think there's nothing, no part of me that continues after death. Okay, so then one time I was teaching a course in India, one of these 10-day introduction to Buddhism and meditation courses. And when going through these 10 non-virtues, one woman asked, with regard to this one, wrong view, she says, my family, they're not Buddhist. I think they were Jewish. So she said, they don't believe in karma. They don't believe in rebirth. They don't believe in enlightenment. So does that mean they are creating the bad karma of wrong views? And for some reason, I never thought of that before. Yeah, what about all the non-Buddhists? The majority of people in the world are not Buddhist. And so, they're not believing in many of the Buddhist views. Does that mean they're creating the bad karma, negative karma of wrong views? So I suppose we could spend a lot of time discussing this. But just some thoughts that I have. One is that I've heard His Holiness talk about this, and I was trying to find something about it in one of his books, but I couldn't. So I think it was just in a talk that he gave. And what I remember him saying was that the criteria for wrong views would differ for different religions. So for example, a Christian, okay, somebody says, I'm a Christian, but then they don't believe in God. They say, there's no such thing as God. So that would be a wrong view for a Christian, right? So if you belong to a religion where God, the existence of God and belief in God is crucial, that's the heart of your religion, but then you reject that. You say, oh, God doesn't exist. So that would be a wrong view, okay? So I thought that makes a lot of sense, yeah? That wrong views, the way it's explained here in Buddhist texts is for Buddhists. These would be wrong views for a Buddhist. But for those who are not Buddhist, not all of these would necessarily be wrong views. But then with regard to karma, I mean, we use the term karma, but I think, I haven't studied all the different religions, but I think they all have some sort of view that's similar to karma without using that term. Yeah, like certain, in Christianity, it's the 10 Commandments. In other religions, they talk about other things, but they all have certain guidelines about what is correct behavior, virtuous behavior, and what is incorrect behavior that you should avoid. Yeah? Because of consequences. If you do this, there will be bad consequences. You'll go to hell. Bad things will happen to you. And if you do this, there will be good consequences. You'll go to heaven. You'll have happiness. So I think all religions have some notions of that. And so I think, yeah, as long as you accept those ideas and try to follow them to the best of your ability, then you're still within that realm of right views and avoiding wrong views. But if you were to say, oh, I don't believe that, I don't accept that, that's nonsense, that doesn't make any sense. So whether it's called karma or something else, rejecting this notion that your actions, the actions you do, bring about results that you will experience in the future. So I think that's kind of a universal view that's important to accept. And even, outside of religion, I mean, there's a lot of people who don't follow any religion, but in society, right? I think most societies, most countries have laws. And those laws are basically about not harming others. Yeah, I mean, it's just regarded as wrong to kill somebody, to steal their things, to rape their wife and daughter, and so on and so forth. So, those are considered wrong behavior. So I think we just have this basic sense as human beings about what kind of behavior is correct, what kind of behavior is wrong. So yeah, that seems to be something universal, universally accepted and understood. And if you were to reject that and say, I don't care what anybody says, I can do whatever I want, there won't be any results, any consequences, then that would be, you know, a serious wrong view that's for anyone, Buddhist or not, that would lead to unfortunate consequences. So I think as long, you know, whether you're Buddhist or not, whether you believe in enlightenment or not, but as long as you do have acceptance that actions bring results and you live your life in accordance with that, then that seems to be, I think you could still say you're avoiding wrong views. And in volume 2, it has a quote from the Buddha, which I was happy to come across. This is from one of the Pali Sutras, the Anguttara Nikaya. So he says, there is a person who has wrong views and perverted ideas, such as there is no ethical value in a gift, offering, or sacrifice. There is no result or recompense from constructive or destructive actions. There is neither this world nor another world, meaning no rebirth. There are no duties toward mother and father. So that's that one about denying existence of parents. There are no spontaneously reborn beings. And there are no ascetics and Brahmins in this world living and conducting themselves rightly, who can explain this world and the world beyond, having realized them by their own direct knowledge. Yeah, so most of the details of what's considered wrong views are found in this statement from the Buddha. So it isn't just something made up by Lama Tsongkhapa or Indian masters, but it's based on the Buddha's words. Sorry? The Anguttara Nikaya 10:211. It's on page 240 in volume 2. That's where I got it from. And then also, if you look at those 5 factors that are needed for the action of wrong views to be complete, you know, one of those is a mind that delights in performing non-virtue, harmful actions. So if you think about your friends and your relatives who may not believe in Buddhist views, but do they have that kind of mind? Do they have a mind that delights in non-virtue? Yeah. So probably not. I mean, there's some people in the world for sure who delight in non-virtue, but I think they're a minority rather than the majority. Yeah. And again, yeah, for it to be wrong views, you do have to actually think about something, you know, spend some time thinking about it, pondering it, looking at it from different angles, and then make a decision, like you come to a conclusion, I don't believe in that. And so again, with our friends and relatives who are not Buddhist, have they really gone through that kind of process? Or they just don't believe it because they didn't hear about it, they didn't learn about it, it's not part of our culture? But probably not. So just not having the view of karma doesn't necessarily mean that you are denying karma. That makes sense, what I'm saying? Okay, so this is something that isn't in our text, but it is in the larger text, the Lamrim Chenmo, and also in volume 2. And it's in the Abhidharma Kosha by Vasubandhu. So it's just interesting, not necessary to know, but it's interesting. And it does explain something I once heard from a teacher that I didn't fully understand at the time. I'll talk about that later. Okay, so it says that although each of the 10 can be initiated with any of the 3 poisons, so that means with all of those 10 non-virtuous actions, the motivation could be either attachment or anger, aversion, or ignorance. That could be the initial motivation. But killing, harsh speech, and harmful intent are brought to completion with animosity. So what that means is your motivation to kill might first be desire, attachment. But at the time of doing the action and bringing the action to completion, there's animosity, there's hatred. So for example, people who go hunting or poaching, so their motivation is probably mainly attachment. They want to eat the meat of that animal or take its skin or its horns or tusks or whatever. So there's a desire, attachment to enjoy something with that animal. But then going through the action, hunting it, and then killing it, at the time of killing it, there will always be some hatred, some animosity. So I once heard a Lama talk about, a student asked a question about mercy killing, euthanasia. We have this custom in the West, if an animal is suffering, is injured or sick or old, and we think, oh, they're suffering, I'll put them out of their misery. So we usually have the vet come and give them a shot, or I don't know, that's what they usually do, some kind of injection. And so somebody asked about that, and the Lama said that even in the case of mercy killing, there could be, because the initial motivation there is seemingly compassion. We feel compassion for that being, thinking they're suffering. It would be better to end their suffering as quickly as possible. So the initial motivation may seem like compassion, but at the time of doing the action, there would be some, I don't remember the exact word he used, but some kind of hatred or anger, hostility. So I didn't fully understand what he meant at that time, but now I understand because of this. So I don't know, this is something to check, to investigate it. Maybe you've never been involved in that kind of situation, but yeah, I think the way Geshe Zopa said, he said, even if the initial motivation isn't anger or hatred, but once you're engaged in the action, the motivation is to harm, to end the life of that being. And that is a form of hostility, a form of anger. It may be low level, subtle, but I don't know.
I think it could be related to your own discomfort. In other words, I think it could be related to your own discomfort. Not that you have any anger, because people will put down their pets who they love so dearly, and because they don't believe that purification of karma, and they're feeling really uncomfortable in seeing the animal, their beloved pet suffering so much.
Yeah, I think it's good to check carefully what's going on in your mind. For sure, there's love and there's compassion, but there is probably also, this is so unpleasant for me. This is making me so uncomfortable, and seeing this being suffer. Maybe also inconvenience, because animals, when they're, especially if it's a large animal, you know, they lose control of their bowels, making a mess, you have to clean it up. And yeah, yeah. Although I know a vet, a woman vet in Holland, and I think this question had come up, and she's a Buddhist, and this question had come up with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and apparently he did give some instructions on if you really have to do it, like maybe there's really no other way around ending the life of that animal, then she said that there are ways of doing it to, I didn't get the details, but she told me anyone who's in that situation can write to her and she'll explain how to do it. Yeah, so yeah, there's things you can do to make it not so completely negative and make it something virtuous and beneficial. I mean, even the Dalai Lama once, I think he was asked, you know, about abortion, and he said, in certain circumstances, I don't think he ever said it's a virtuous thing to do, but it's, again, I don't remember the exact words, but necessary or maybe, yeah, unavoidable. So, like, you know, I think the teachings on karma shouldn't be regarded as concrete, hard and fast, and you can never do any of these actions under any circumstances, but rather if you understand all the different details about karma, and you do come to a situation where you may have to do something that's considered non-virtuous, there are ways you can work with that to alleviate it. We're going to come to that next. The difference between heavy karma and light karma. But I was thinking about one situation I was in. Venerable Children was there as well. We were both living in France in Vajrayogini Institute, Dorje Pamo. We had this little nunnery that was part of Vajrayogini Institute. And it's an old building. It's an old chateau. It belonged to Toulouse-Lautrec, the artist. But it goes way back. And at a certain point, they found that there were these insects living in the wooden beams. It was all, you know, the framework of the building was wood and very old. And there was some kind of insect. It wasn't termite, it was something else. That was living inside of the beams and all the other framework. And they tried to investigate if there was a way to, you know, extract these insects, but it wasn't possible. There was no way to get rid of them other than to kill them. And if we didn't do that, then, you know, everything would collapse. They'd eventually eat up all the wooden beams and framework and everything, and then the building would collapse. We wouldn't be able to live in it, and it could also be very unsafe. So they consulted the Lama, the Geshe, what to do. I wasn't involved in this, I just heard it secondhand, but apparently what he said was that, you know, what we are doing here in this building is virtue. You know, we are studying Dharma, practicing Dharma, teaching Dharma to others. We're doing something really important and beneficial and meaningful. And if we have to move out of here, we don't have the money to go somewhere else. And also, if you think about it, if, you know, we moved out of that building, somebody else would move in, they would exterminate those insects. They wouldn't be able to, you know, continue with it. So they'd get exterminated anyway. And it would be very unsafe for us to continue living in that building under those circumstances. And so he said, you know, because of what we're doing is beneficial, then, you know, it's important for us to continue. So they decided to bring in the exterminators. But by understanding the different factors involved in an action, making it heavier or lighter, our motivation was not one of the three poisons. We were not acting out of greed, hatred, or ignorance, but had compassion for these beings and just wanted to be able to continue our Dharma practice. And so, free of that negative motivation. And we did prayers and pujas and dedicated merit for these beings that they would have a fortunate rebirth. And we generated the wish not to have to do this again, because that's one of the factors that makes something negative. If you feel good about what you're doing and you want to do it again and again and again, then it becomes heavier. But if you feel a lot of remorse and regret and reluctance and you hope never to do this again, then that makes it lighter. And purification, doing purification with the four powers. So I'm just saying there may be circumstances like that where we do have to do something that's normally considered negative or non-virtuous, but we can lighten it, we can make it less heavy, and then there's the practice of purification, which we come to later. Yeah, so the teachings on karma, like the 10 non-virtues and so on, these are meant to be just guidelines rather than hard and fast rules, but just to help us in our life and our decisions to try to avoid as much as possible creating non-virtue and creating virtue as much as we can. Okay, let's see if we can do one more thing. This is a little complicated, and I hope it doesn't make you confused, but it's in the book, so we have to go through it. Yeah, so page 130, right after that line about the completion of wrong views, it says, among these 10, the intentions in the mind are actions, but not paths of action. The 7 actions of body and speech are actions, and they are also paths of action, since they are the basis of carrying out the intentions. The 3 of covetousness and so on are paths of actions, but not actions. So that's probably not very clear. And I always have trouble with this point, but I'll see if I don't think it's super important. If you don't understand it, don't worry about it. Don't beat your head against the wall. But this kind of language is found in the sutras and the Abhidharma texts. So you do sometimes come across it. And so I'll just try my best to explain. So there's the term action or karma. The word karma is usually, it means action. It's translated as action. And then there's this other term of path of action or karmic path. And there's a difference between them. Okay, so karma or action, the first bullet point is intention, an ever-present mental factor. So, we talk about karma and people creating karma, beings creating karma, but what exactly is karma? Yeah? Like, what can we point to among the components of a being? We have our 5 aggregates, all the different parts of us, our body and mind. So where is karma? What can we point to as being karma? So it's the mental factor of intention. Karma is the mental factor of intention. So Geshe Zopa says, when somebody kills, a person does the act of killing, the actual karma of killing is the intention to kill. That's a mental factor. If there's no intention to kill, then we don't create the actual karma of killing. And that's a relief, especially here, yeah, having all the land and the forests and the gardens and so on. We don't want to kill. We have no intention to kill any sentient being, but sometimes it happens. Even just walking around, yeah, you don't always see insects on the ground, or you're working with plants and trees, or vacuuming or cleaning up. Sometimes you accidentally kill. But if there's no intention, if you didn't have the intention to kill that sentient being, it's not really a full act of killing. And I was thinking too, robots, right? We create these robots, and sometimes they even look just like people, right? They're made to look like people. So it's possible that a robot could do an act of killing. Maybe not intentionally, but accidentally. A robot could kill. But does the robot accumulate karma? No, not necessarily. If the robot is just acting on its own and kills something, the programmer didn't necessarily tell it to kill. Anyway, I'm just saying the robot, okay, or a machine, I don't know, some other kind of machine might kill somebody, might do an act of killing. But is that karma? They create karma. That's what she's saying. Yeah, the program. Well, I don't know. I don't understand robots, but AI. But if the programmer didn't program the robot to kill, if it just did it on its own. I mean, you know, these movies, there are these sci-fi movies where robots kind of start killing people and taking over the world. And they may not have been programmed to do that. I don't know. Anyway, if this could really happen or not. But the point I'm trying to make is, if a robot kills, they don't create karma because they don't have mind. They don't have consciousness. Okay? So karma is only created by beings who have mind, who have consciousness, who have the mental factor of intention. Okay. So the mental factor of intention, just to remind those who may have studied it before, it's an ever-present mental factor. It's present with every instance of mind. And the way it works, sometimes it's called volition. In some texts, it's called volition. Its job is to move the mind to the object. It's what moves the mind to the object. So it's the conscious and automatic motivating element that causes the mind to involve itself with and apprehend its object. And it's neutral on its own. Intention by itself is neutral, but depending on other mental factors accompanying it, together with it, it could become virtuous or non-virtuous. So if intention is present together with attachment or aversion, anger or ignorance of karma, then it becomes non-virtuous. But if it's with a virtuous mental factor like faith, compassion, then it becomes virtuous. So anyway, that's what we can point to as being karma. Karma is actually the mental factor of intention. Then the term karmic path, we don't use that so often, but it is in the book. Yeah, these 10 things we just went through, they're actually called 10 paths of action. 10 paths of action, or karmic paths. So a karmic path, this is according to Geshe Zopa, is either the cause of an intention or the actualization of an intention. So an example of the cause of an intention would be harmful intent. Okay, so if you are angry at somebody, somebody may have hurt you, upset you, or behaved in a way you don't like, and you have harmful intent. You have this attitude of wanting to harm that person. So that will then lead to the intention to harm by maybe kicking them or biting them or poisoning them or speaking angry words towards them. Okay? So in that case, the cause of an intention to harm is a karmic path, or the other possibility is the actualization of an intention, the way that you carry out an intention. So for example, if you have the intention to do an action, like let's say stealing, you hear about some wealth, some money somewhere, some jewels somewhere, and you have the intention to steal that. So then you move your body, you activate your body to go and do certain actions, and in order to get that thing that you want. So the intention is there, and then an action of body or action of speech is the karmic path. It's like the path that enables you to fulfill that intention, to carry out that intention. So that's the meaning of a karmic path. So I'll just finish this, and it may not be completely clear. We can continue next week. But so what it says is the 7 non-virtues of body and speech, the first 7 of the 10 non-virtues, the things we do with body and speech, those are both karma and karmic paths. So they are karma because they have the intention, the mental factor of intention is there. And they're also karmic paths because they're paths using our body and speech. They're paths for intention, the intention to do something, to fulfill itself, to carry itself out. The 3 non-virtues of mind, covetousness, harmful intent, and wrong views, these are karmic paths, but they are not karma. So they're karmic paths because they are causes of intentions. But they are not karma because they are not intentions. They are afflictions. So they are a different mental factor. Like covetousness is a strong form of attachment, desire. So it's actually an affliction, not an intention. It's not the mental factor of an intention. They're another mental factor. And then harmful intent is the mental factor of, the affliction of anger or hatred, an intense form of that. So again, it's an affliction rather than intention. And then wrong views is mainly ignorance or confusion. So again, it's a different mental factor than intention. So because they're not the mental factor of intention, they're affliction, then that's why they're not karma. So this is probably not clear, but we've kind of run out of time. And we can continue looking at it next week. But again, I don't know how important it is. I don't think it's the most crucial thing to understand, because it's more about terminology, what kind of terminology you use. And I think the most important thing is to just understand that there are these 10 ways that we can use our body and speech that create suffering, create non-virtuous karma and the cause of suffering in the future. So we should really try to be aware of them and avoid them. Whether you call them karma, you call them karmic paths, I don't think is such an important thing, but it's just because those terms do come up in the text. Yeah, so if there are questions, let's leave them until next week and we'll try to. Yeah.
What if you kill a person unintentionally in a car accident that was your fault? Say you went through a stop sign. How does karma apply?
I mean, you made a mistake by going through a stop sign. Yeah, you weren't driving properly, but you didn't have the intention to kill. Okay, you didn't think, I'm going to deliberately drive through this stop sign so that I can kill somebody. Okay? And, I mean, there's still some karma created, yeah, because you were being careless, not careful. But it wouldn't be the full act, it wouldn't be, the complete act of karma, because you didn't have the intention to kill. You probably didn't have the motivation, the affliction to kill. I don't know what other factors might be missing. But anyway, if any of those 4 aspects are missing, then it's not a complete karma. And again, a complete karma means it's the cause. It's like the ticket for another life, another rebirth. So you haven't created that, but you still created some karma. So even if an act isn't complete, if some of those factors are missing, there's still some karma created, and it's not completely sure what would be the outcome of that. So it's always good to purify. And in a practical sense, I mean, you probably, I don't know what the legal situation, if you run a stop sign and kill somebody, it's considered manslaughter. Yeah, it's still, yeah. No. And would you go to jail? Would you go to prison? Get a sentence? Probably, yeah. So you would, yeah, legally there would be consequences, and it's important to feel remorse and make apologies to the family and other people close to that person. And so, yeah, it's important to purify and do what you can to express your regret and try your best never to do that again. Is that answering the question? Okay, so let's stop there and make a dedication of the merit, the positive energy.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Love Song's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniyataya. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forever.